Page 229 of The Unfolding is the story of Gina and Jeff.
That house that you used to love so much, when it's empty, it's just not the same. And that's, I think, the first time I really felt lonely. Once my youngest left, I thought, I need to do something different. I've got to go make some new memories or the old ones are going to kill me.
God's story has been unfolding.
Since the beginning of time.
He invites you to be a part of it.
Wow. Another page in The Unfolding.
Hey, this is Meredith Foster. There have been a few times on the Unfolding podcast when we have shared a love story. I love sharing stories that are an encouragement to anyone who's waiting and praying for a spouse. So when my friend told me about Gina and Jeff, I knew I wanted to record their story. So it was about 12 years ago that Gina's husband passed away after a short battle with cancer. They had 2 young children. It was so difficult. She couldn't imagine ever loving someone that way again. Many years passed, and eventually Gina began praying for a husband, and her friends started praying too. Little did she know, across the country, Jeff was praying a very similar prayer. This is a beautiful story of hope and trusting God.
I grew up in Alabama. I lived there until about 5 years ago. I was an attorney, met my first husband, and we were married for 18 years, had 2 beautiful children. And in September of 2012, he was diagnosed with cancer and lived for 3 months. It was very fast. My kids were 13 and 15 at the time. We were very involved in church. Faith has always been an important part of my life. And I was very thankful that my kids were able to see how my husband handled that illness. He had been the picture of health until the day he was diagnosed, and then it just happened so quickly. But he showed them what it's like to walk through really hard times, but keeping your eyes on God and knowing and trusting that no matter what the outcome, God's going to be with us. And he told us throughout, he was like, we're not going to question God. We're not going to doubt him. We're just going to trust him. Wow. And he's going to get us through this, whatever that looks like. And of course, I think that's when pray without ceasing became a reality for me especially, because I don't know how I would get through the days if I was not just constantly on my knees, just saying, God, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how to navigate this. I had a great support system of friends, church friends, family, very fortunate in that way. But there were just days that it was not just, God, I need help through this day. It's, God, get me through the next 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. Having to tell my kids really hard things, just the diagnosis, and then the night that happened, I never thought I would have to tell my kids something like that. But God was faithful through it all. Now, there were days that if I hadn't had my kids, there would have been days I probably would never have gotten, wouldn't have made it out of bed. But I still had to get my kids to school. And I didn't want them to worry that, oh gosh, is mom okay? I always wanted them to know that this is not going to be easy, but God's going to get us through this. Not to say that I did things perfectly, but I think my kids recognized what was getting us through those hard times. I went back to work, had been fortunate to be a stay-at-home mom that was 15 years. So I went back to work. That was a little scary. I'm an attorney, but again, had not practiced in 15 years and everything had changed. But again, God was just so good too. It was a friend that I had worked with before kids asked if I would be interested in coming back part-time just to help out. As scared as I was, it was something that I needed to do. And I think my kids needed to see that I could step up, and again, worked with wonderful people, and they were just so encouraging. And when my youngest graduated high school, I knew I was going to wanted to do something different. I knew what my life looked like there, and it's wonderful. And as much as I loved my friends and my church and everything there, I knew that I needed to do something different. I had been listening to Kathy Lee one morning on TV, and she was discussing what had happened to her. And, again, when her husband passed away and the children were gone, that house that she used to love so much, when it's empty, it's just not the same. And that's, I think, the first time I really felt lonely was then. Because before, my kids were always home, their friends were there, and there was just always a lot going on. Once my youngest left, I thought, I need to do something different. I heard Kathy Lee say, I've got to go make some new memories or the old ones are going to kill me. Ooh. And that just resounded within my heart really deeply. I thought I was going to move to the beach, but I was coming to Nashville a couple times a month to go to different concerts. And I would drag a girlfriend with me. I would say, who can go to this one? And we would just come and listen to music. And a dear friend of mine who I grew up with, who has lived in Nashville for years and years and years, she's the one that suggested I move here first. She said, you can always go to the beach later, but I think you would love to live here. So she set me up with a realtor, and I moved here knowing one person 5 years ago.
Let me ask about your faith, your relationship with God. You walked through a 3-month illness. That's such a shock and so fast. And then those years, you're diving into taking care of your kids. You're the sole provider, all of those things. There's a lot on your plate. As you look back over those years after he passed away, what was your relationship with God like during that time? Did you ever walk through what were you thinking, God? Or were you just so desperate for him that?
More desperate for him and realizing I could do nothing without him. And also looking back on, as hard as all that was, I looked back on, okay, well, I had Buddy for 18 years. I was blessed to have him for that long. A lot of people don't ever have that. So I looked at it from that. And that to me was helpful, just to be grateful that I had him for 18 years.
You're now several years past, did you ever think that you would marry again? Or was that even?
I said I would not.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I couldn't imagine that I would ever, my heart would heal and that I would meet someone that I would feel that way again for.
Jeff, what was your life and faith like before?
So for me, I had been living in Southern California for quite a few years. Had been in the military previous to that, which is where I learned to fly. Eventually I met a woman and we got married, and it was a short marriage and a difficult divorce. I kind of came out of that with, I don't see myself ever getting married again. But over time, the one thing that I will, I give credit to my ex-wife, and I've shared this with Gina, is my faith and my belief were always there. But I didn't feel there was a need necessarily to go to church every Sunday to reaffirm that faith. There were periods in time throughout my life that I would go for a while, but it was never consistent. And she invited me to come along, first join a small group and then to go to church with her. And I started attending. So that was the one thing that I'm truly grateful for. I share with Gina as well and with other folks is I've always tried to look at kind of the bright side and look, what did I learn from that experience? What did I get out of it? What did I learn about myself? That's what I choose to focus on, because it'd be so easy to sit and focus on the negative stuff. And that doesn't do anybody any good. A pastor at the church that I attended out there used to say, when you hang on to a hurt, at the end of the day, the only person that you're really hurting is yourself. And so once I got to that point, and, it was one of forgiving myself and forgiving her as well. And my attitude went from, I don't see myself to getting married again, to never say never. And then, a subsequent relationship after that, I actually really did start to see that this was something that I wanted, and that it was definitely a possibility. Then it became one of those things that I just started praying about. Gina will tell you she was very specific and got even more and more specific with...
In terms of prayers?
In terms of prayers for what she was looking for. For me, I was somewhat specific, but at the end of the day, most of my prayers were, God, you know my heart, and you know that the perfect woman is out there for me. And I trust in you that if that person does truly exist, that you're going to find a way to make that happen. Lots of prayers. And
how long? How long was this period of time praying?
Well, let's see. I separated in 2009. The divorce was finalized in 2011. And I moved out here in 2023.
So you were praying for a long time.
Long time.
I know there are a lot of people listening who are in the waiting stage. And so I think that's encouraging for those of us who've ever been through like the long wait on those kind of prayers. Did you ever get discouraged or was your prayer always open-handed?
I think, there's times when you get a little bit discouraged, but you just have to, at the end of the day, you have to have faith in God that it's going to be on his time. I think that there were things that I needed to work on myself. And I think there were things that God needed to work on me as well. Once those things were taken care of, then you just have to trust that we may not be able to understand it or see it at the time, but that God's timing is perfect, and have faith and trust in him that when the timing is right, that all things are possible through him, whether it's a relationship or a job or anything else in life, all things are possible through him.
Okay, you weren't really looking and you moved to Nashville. Then what happened?
Moved and immediately knew this is where I was supposed to be. It was just confirmation after confirmation, just from the neighborhood I moved into. The group of ladies in my neighborhood who we just got to be really good friends immediately. And then from that, invited to a Bible study that I just love. And I felt just I really couldn't say that I'd been this unhappy. I'd learned to live again, but I was really experiencing joy again. Mm-hmm. But of course, all my friends were like, it's been a long, long time, because at that point it'd been like 8 years and I really hadn't dated and they were like, we just don't want you to be by yourself. What if we, and I didn't want to do any dating apps or any of that. I'm like, if I'm going to meet somebody, it's going to be someone's going to have to introduce me to someone. So I did start praying, okay, God, if there's somebody out there. At first I was not as specific. I'm like, my heart. If there's someone, then you're going to have to bring him into my life. And there may have to be neon signs pointing, going, this is the one. But I knew I would have to have signs from him that it was. And then I was having dinner with a friend, and we were discussing things, and she said, I'm going to start praying for you as well. And because I told her, I said, okay, now I'm praying more specific. I'm like, if there's somebody, Lord, first of all, I know it has to be your will. And if your will is that, I know what's best for you now, Gina, and you're going to be single throughout, but you're going to be okay, because I'm going to continue to surround you with great friends and all of that. And so my prayer was, Lord, if it's not your will, would you just take that desire away from me and let me just be content in that? But if not, then I'm looking for someone who has a committed relationship with Christ, not just somebody that goes to church, but somebody who knows Jesus. And that's an important part of who they are. And then secondly it's going to have to be someone who my kids can learn to love and respect. That was a deal. That would have been a
non-negotiable
breaker right there. And, a few other things, just that we would have some common interests. I knew he would have to love music. He would have to love to travel, those things. So this conversation happened in December of 22, and May 21st of 23, I get a phone call from that friend. And I know that she told me I'm going to be
really praying
for this. So she calls me, and I didn't tell Jeff this part of it first. This was a Sunday afternoon. And she says, what are you doing? And I said, Sunday afternoon, I'm at home taking a nap. That's what I do after church. She said, Gina, I've just met your future husband. You need to get ready right now and come meet us.
Was he with her at that moment?
Yes, but I was not listening to the phone call. She was, I'll tell you my side of that after she's finished, but she was walking a little ways away. I was still sitting next to her husband talking, and she's over on the phone having this conversation with Gina.
But you tell, because you were there with them.
So she didn't share this portion of the story with me for quite some time. So
I didn't want to scare him off.
Yeah. So, for me, I have to backstep a minute. How I wound up out here in Tennessee, living in Southern California, taxes and whatnot. And it was just becoming to the point. And I always said, when the pluses outweigh the minuses, when the minuses outweigh the pluses, it's time to go. And I had started looking. I had friends in Texas. I had friends in Florida. And then one day I took my car in to have it serviced, and I come back out and I turn on the radio, and it's country music. And I'm like, okay, change the channel. It's another country music station. Change the channel. It's another country. And this keeps going. Unbeknownst to me, what they had done when it was at the dealership is they had put it into the country music band, if you will, on Sirius. So all I could select was one of about 8 stations of country music. And I finally settled out on, it's like, okay, this one is actually, I can listen to this till I get home because I'm driving. I can't figure out how to get this and get it to the next one there. And I'm like, I kind of like this song. And then the next one came on. I'm like, I kind of like this one too. Well, that started my exploration of country music, and it's probably now my favorite genre of music
How
to listen
interesting.
to. So that then put Tennessee on the map. I started looking here, and I had actually started talking with an agent, and then COVID hit. I actually had 3 trips planned out here to come out and meet with the agent and go looking, and then COVID happened. Everything got shut down, and then in December of 22, I was talking with a friend of mine, and he had been looking and had a friend out here that he had served in the military with who was now a real estate agent. He put the 2 of us in contact. I started talking with him. I came out here in April for just a weekend in Nashville with a buddy of mine from the Navy. And I said, hey, do you mind on Sunday afternoon if we go out for maybe 3 or 4 hours, look at a few houses? And he said, no problem at all. So met up with the agent. We went out on the Sunday afternoon and looked, and the 4th house I looked at ended up being the house that I put an offer in and ended up purchasing. So a month later, I'm now out here, and this is, as I say, it was a very fateful day. Came out to do an inspection as part of the closing process. The inspection was on Saturday morning. I woke up on Sunday morning and went, okay, what am I going to do now? I was not planning to go back until Monday. I had a rental car and a hotel and everything. And I started looking at it and came literally this close to racing out to the airport, going standby and trying to get back to California. But it would have been literally check out, race on oversold flights. And I went, okay, everything's paid for. Why don't we just say, what can I do? And so I looked around, found this place and went out there, did a tour. I was sitting down having a cocktail, and there was this couple sitting next to me. We started talking. Turned out they had moved from Southern California as well 4 years previous. And we just had a nice conversation and going back and forth and asking, just all kinds of different questions. And I went up to use the restroom and came back, and that's when I saw her friend Cindy out walking around in the grass talking on the phone. And so she comes back after a few minutes, and she sits back down and she looks at me and she says, you're going to think I'm weird. And I never ever do this, but can I ask you a couple of questions? And I said, sure. And she said, are you married? I said, no. She said, are you dating anybody? I said, no, not really. I have this girlfriend. Her name is Gina. She's in my Bible study group, and then proceeds to tell me all about Gina, all these different things about her. And her final comment at the very end of this thing was, oh, and she's really attractive too. And so she goes, what do you think? And I said, you know what? Sure, why not? And she's like, well, how about right now? Sure, why not? She says, okay, settle up. You're going to follow us back into downtown Franklin.
I got to hear your thoughts on the drive there. What were you thinking on the drive there?
Kind of like, what have I got to lose?
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a good perspective to have.
I mean, because I've always, it's one of those things where, much like Gina, I've never been able to do the dating apps or things like that. I've just always relied on friends to introduce me, figuring that they know me, they know this person, and they know the 2 of us. And so.
But now you're in a situation with near strangers. What do you have to lose?
It's exactly. I was like, what do I have to lose? So I follow them into Franklin, and we go to this. It's a hotel, and they've got a very nice restaurant. And we sat down in there, and about 10 minutes later, Gina comes walking in and sits down next to me on the sofa. And over the next 2 hours, the 4 of us just have a nice conversation. About that point, Cindy gets up to use the restroom, and her husband looks at us and goes, I don't know about you two, but kind of getting hungry. You guys up for dinner? And she and I just turned to look at each other and went, sure, why not? So we all got up and we walked a couple of blocks down to this restaurant, sat down, and again, another hour and a half, 2 hours goes by, just having a nice conversation, good meal. And at the end of this, it's now, Cindy says, you know what? You two need to get to know each other a little bit better without us being around. So we're leaving, and all of our cars were down by the other place. So we all walked back in, and she and I just walked in and just sat down and proceeded to talk for probably another hour. The conversation was starting to kind of wind down. I'm about to say something to her when she just looks at me and she says, I got to tell you, this was so nice and so comfortable, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you. And I looked at her and I said, I was about to say the same thing to you. And I said, I don't know when my next trip is out here, or we're still closing. So we exchanged information and we started talking on the telephone, what would be like every 2 or 3 days, and texting eventually turned into, we were pretty much talking every day, texting every day. I came back out about 5 weeks later, and we've never looked back.
Okay, I got to hear your perspective on this, Gina. So you get the phone call, and this is from the friend who'd been praying for you and knew it.
Yes.
And she says, I think I've met your husband. She literally says that.
She did. She did. And I was like, slow down. Slow down.
Slow down.
She's like, get up and come meet us right now. Because I thought, maybe we were going to meet tomorrow. And she's like, no, he's leaving. You have to come right now. He flies out tomorrow and you have to meet him. She kept saying, Gina, he's different. All the things we talked about, he checks all the boxes, everything we talked about. And I was like, okay, I'm coming. And it was the most, I was a little nervous at first, but I thought, again,
What do I have to lose?
what do I have to lose? And here is a dear friend who I know has been praying for me. She's not going to lead me into something, if she feels like this guy, I knew she'd ask all the questions, all the questions.
Yeah. Directly or indirectly.
Yes. So I trusted that. And it was, to me, just immediately, it was just so comfortable. And I could look at it. I knew what a nice, just by looking at him and looking at his eyes, I thought, this is a really nice guy. It was really pretty cool that we got to know each other really over the phone for a while, because he came in, when he came back, it had been 5 or 6 weeks since he had been here. And we went to dinner, I think both nights. And then it was probably another month. And so, now we're like, okay, this is going well. And so then the next time he came, I think he stayed then an extra night. So then it was not just a dinner. I think I went with you you were looking at furniture or something. So we started, it wasn't just evening. We would get together in the afternoons, which would lead into dinner. And we were just spending more time. It didn't take me long to realize that I was definitely developing feelings for him that I didn't know
You would ever feel again?
that I would ever feel again.
I think the phone call thing is so interesting. Like I would say our parents' generation wrote letters, and you can look at those and see how you develop, if they were miles apart or he was in the military or those, and you see how relationships develop that way. And I think there is something to be said for conversation over a long period of time that, you get to know them in a way. I don't know. I think there's something beautiful about that. So, yeah.
I think that just it really allowed us to connect on a deeper level, because we were able to, ask questions and with no other real distractions there. It's just her and I on the phone or, a text message. And we're able to, I think, go into a little bit more detail and depth than you would if there's distractions around. So having that there, I think it just helped our relationship tremendously. Then as coming out, and I just kept extending the amount of time that I was staying here. And, the same for me. I knew very early on that there was something so different and special about Gina. Was developing feelings as well, but, probably from the male perspective, the reluctance to that vulnerability. I will definitely say she was the first one to say that she loved me, and the feelings for me were there. It took me, I don't think it was a lot longer, but before I
Could say it.
It was one of those things where, to me, those words are really, really important. I didn't want to just say them without there being true feeling and meaning behind them, that was truly what I was feeling and knew in my heart to be the case. And so at that point, there was just no looking back anymore. It was the other thing too. I wanted to kind of jump back into when Gina was talking about when her husband passed. Her kids being 13 and 15, and that's such a vulnerable age. You can see so many examples of where kids have strayed as a result of something like that. And she's got two of the most wonderful kids. They have embraced me and welcomed me into the family. To me, it's really a testament to what Gina did in terms of how she raised those kids.
It was evident, very evident for me with Jeff that I'm like, oh my, I can see this going somewhere. Mm-hmm. It was just very different for me. And it was just so obvious to me in my heart that this was a different relationship. Was what I'd been praying for.
All those years, all those prayers, Jeff seemed to be what Gina had been praying for, and Gina seemed to be what Jeff had been praying for. Could these two, who had said never again, actually find love and marriage?
And it was in September of 23 that I made the move and made it official that this was the place to be and where I wanted to be, because it was the same thing for me. There was just something so different about her, and I knew that this was someone I really wanted to get to know on a much deeper level. And it became very clear to me that this was someone that I wanted to do life with.
Was there a point where you both acknowledged, I think we know where this is headed?
Yeah, there was. It was actually on our 1-year anniversary meeting. We had gone out to dinner and actually went to the restaurant at the place that we met that very first time. We were just having a conversation, and I said to her, I said, I know how I feel, and I'm pretty sure I know how you are feeling, but this to me feels like we're heading for marriage. And I said, is that? And she says, absolutely. I said, good, because I said, we're on the same page here. And I said, what I would like to start doing, not tonight, but as the next few weeks and months unfold, I'd like to start having conversations of how we see and what marriage is going to look like for the two of us. She thought that was a great idea. And so that's what we started doing. A lot of times it was, be over dinner. We'd be sitting there and I'm like, one or the other of us would bring up a topic. And so what do you think about this? And well, I think in that sense that when you trust and you put your faith in God, that he is going to make this happen on his time, that when it did happen for us, I think that's why there was just, we both knew it. And there was just no hesitation, no looking back. There was no fear. There was no trepidation. There was no nervousness. It was just, we knew in our hearts that, and you could see God's hand all over this in so many different ways. I ended up proposing to Gina over in France. And we'd had this trip planned for this cruise down in Bordeaux. But it was really important to me that that's what I was planning to do, is that I wanted to have the blessing of her children before doing that. We're coming up, and it was literally the night before we left. I said, we've got to get your kids on the phone, because we called up both of her kids, daughter first and then her son. I think her daughter said, yeah, we've seen this coming. And almost to the point of like, yeah, what took you so long? And even her son, fully on board as well. And that to me it was so special. And, it was just, again, just another sign. It was what, Gina had mentioned. That was one of the things that she'd been praying about, was that her kids would be accepting of me, having their support and their blessing was huge. And then I think the other one was, it was all the other little signs was once the wedding plans kind of unfolded. The original plan had been we were going to do a destination wedding in Italy in September. But then you've got the logistics, it's if the person there that would perform the ceremony is not authorized or licensed or whatever the requirements are to perform a marriage that's acceptable to the States, we knew we were most likely going to have to do some type of ceremony prior. There was no doubt in our mind who we wanted to have do it. It's the woman that leads Gina's Bible study. And both of us were just fully on board with that. It was one night we were just, again, cooking dinner and we were talking about marriage and wedding and all those things. And, Gina just looks at me and she says, I could get married tomorrow. And I looked at her and I said, I feel the same way. And we both looked at each other like, are you really being serious here? And we're like, yeah.
Now, this is December. We got engaged October 24th. This is December, and we're talking about getting married this September of 25.
9 months in the future.
Yeah.
And we both kind of looked at each other and realized that we were both serious. And I said, this is a big decision. And I said, I think we need to, one, pray about this, and two, think about this overnight. And let's see where we're at. And so the next day, same thing. And I'm like, she says to me, no, nothing's changed for me. I said, no, nothing's changed for me either. And I said, this is a big decision. I think let's continue to pray about it and think about it. We got together again the following day. And so we said, yeah, let's do this. And then we started looking at it. And the key thing that we wanted, and that was the other thing that was really important for us, was we knew we wanted her kids to be our witnesses. Then it was like, well, when are the kids going to be here? Well, we know they're coming for Christmas. So we looked at it, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, the kids get here on the 20th. Christmas is right after that. And so Saturday the 21st, what do you think? And so we decided on that date. And like I said, there was no question who we wanted to perform the ceremony. So Gina gets on the phone, and she...
I see Laura at Bible study.
Oh, yeah.
We had just, again, decided, okay, this was going to leave us less than 2 weeks. And so I just said, would you be in town? Would you be able to? And she was like, well, actually, I could do the 21st. And I went, that's exactly the day that we were thinking, hoping. Another friend from Bible study, I called her, and she said she could be our photographer. Another friend said, yes, I can do the flower. And we were able to get our premarital counseling in with another friend in Bible study. And that also was just a wonderful experience, too. I'm glad we were able to do that.
So
everything fell into
it
place.
just
Everything
fell into place. So many little things like that you could just see God's hand. Because, who would have thought? Literally less than 2 weeks, and we go, this is the day we want to do it. She's available.
Did you end up proposing on the cruise?
I did. It was pretty special. It was another magical day. I don't think the 21st of December is going to be probably, that one is going to be a tough one to top. But I thought this would be a perfect time to do it would be when we were on this cruise in France. So I had brought a ring with me. And as soon as we got on board the ship, I went down. I told Gina, I said, I've got to go check something down at the front desk on the ship, and went down and met with them. And we knew that there was about midway through the cruise, there was going to be one evening where we were going to go up to a chateau up in the Margaux district of Bordeaux. I asked the head of guest services, I said, would this be, and he goes, it would be a perfect place. He said, they've got the chateau is beautiful, and they've got these beautiful gardens out front. He said that would be spectacular. So immediately I started then dropping hints to Gina. I said, I was just talking to this one of the guys on the ship, and he was telling me, the night that we're going up to the chateau, that they've got these beautiful gardens, but there's not going to be a lot of time to see them. And by the time we finish dinner, it's going to be dark. So we need to go look at them right when we get there. So we get to the chateau, and he's standing there on the steps, and he says, oh, did you still want to see the garden? I said, absolutely. So he then took us over to the chateau, and on the front, the steps going up. And as we're coming around and getting close to the steps, Gina looks over there, and she sees this vase with 5 roses in it and a bucket of champagne. She says, there's some roses and champagne on the steps there. And I said, yes, there are. And she goes, is that for us? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, they are. And she's kind of looking at me, and I said, there's a little more going on here than you may realize. And so I had her get up on the steps, and I had a card, and I had written this card to her. And I said, when you get to this point on the card, I want you to tell me. So meanwhile, the gentleman from the ship, he's got his camera out, and he's filming and taking pictures of all of this stuff. So it gets down to that point on the card. And, basically I told her how I felt about her, what this meaning behind the 5 roses were. So when she got to that point on the card and told me that she was there, I was down on one knee.
Well, I will say I didn't really know that anything, I knew at some point on this trip, since he had called the kids, that we were going to get engaged. But I really, in my mind, I thought it probably happened at the end of the trip because we were going to end in Paris. And I thought it was going to be in Paris. But as we walked over to the front of the chateau, and I thought, it might be happening. It might be happening. And he truly had thought of everything, and even had a really special song playing while I'm reading the card. And just, it was so heartfelt. And I knew he had put a lot of thought and preparation into it. And could not have imagined anything more romantic or thoughtful or sweet than the way he proposed.
I love how God thinks of even the details of the little things that,
Yes.
you think about the prayers that you both were praying, you in California and you and moving to Nashville, and then your friend starts praying. And you can't imagine at that standpoint. It's really hard to imagine that God could answer all of those. And as you said, you were holding it with loosely with open hands. And then to see him do.
Even bigger and better than what in my mind it could have been. It definitely a lot more than I.
Yeah.
But that's God.
Yeah. I mean, because I didn't know anybody here. The only person I knew when I came to Tennessee was the real estate agent. I met him for the first time when I came here, and he showed me the house. Again, it was kind of just stepping out on faith and trusting that God is going to make this work. But I had no idea when, made the decision to move here and to buy the house and here that I was going to meet this lovely woman and be where we're at today.
Now let's talk about your wedding day. All those details that had to come together to make it happen. You're doing this in 2 weeks' time, which I'm sure you never imagined that you were going to be doing that. But it's kind of cool how you both had prayed about it for several days because it was a big deal. But again, you just felt peace about it.
So much peace about it. I can't imagine it going any smoother than it did. Again, like we weren't nervous. We were just like this and this and this. It just, again, everything fell into place. And it was just such a sweet ceremony with, just us, my kids, and Laura. And our plan had been we were still going to get married in Italy with a little more family there. And after December 21st, we were like, that day was perfect. That's what I'm going to remember. I don't need to do another ceremony because this was exactly what I think we both wanted. And it was perfect.
Yeah, it was truly a magical day. The gal from her Bible study that came in that did the flowers, decorated and put flowers up for us and 2 kids there. It was so intimate, just the 4 of us. There's nothing I would have changed, and I don't think it could have gone any better. Even a little, again, this was in our mind, another little God thing there was we knew where we wanted to go to have dinner. Her daughter was coming in, and she said, hey, would it be all right if when I'm in town, we go to this one restaurant in Franklin for dinner? Absolutely. Well, unbeknownst to us, 2 months earlier, she had called up and made dinner reservations at that restaurant for Saturday the 21st at 7:15.
Your daughter had?
2 months
Just
prior.
because she was coming in for Christmas, she didn't know
She had no idea that we were.
that this was going to be our wedding reception, kind of.
So we kind of co-opted her dinner, and it became our wedding reception. But again, it was
And again,
It was
just the
perfect.
4 of us for dinner, and it was
Perfect.
We just had just an amazing evening and night, and then we stayed in Franklin. I had asked her originally. We were just planning to after dinner come back to the house, and I said, hey, how would you feel about if we kind of bring this full circle? And the hotel where we met on May 21st, that we stay there that first night. And she's like, I love it. So
One of the things I've been thinking about is just the sweetness of God to do all those kinds of details to more than answer your prayers. You come through that kind of experience, and it sure raises your faith that he can handle anything that's ahead of you. You feel like your faith has been transformed in any way because of what you've witnessed him do?
Oh, absolutely. It just affirms God's goodness. He has been, with both of us throughout our lives, and the good and the bad.
Right.
He's always been there. But we kind of look at it life now. It's like we're kind of living our best life right now. Life is really good.
no doubt.
And we know it's life. Things will be thrown at us, but we know who to turn to. Mm-hmm. We do. And something that we have prayed since we were engaged is that we keep God at the center of our relationship. Mm-hmm. That's key. That I think as long as we do that, no matter what gets thrown at us, we're going to come out okay and even stronger.
Mm-hmm. And that's a prayer that we say almost, when we're praying over it before dinner each night, almost every night. That is part of the prayer. And I know for me personally, when I'm having the conversations with God, is that I'm asking him to never let me lose sight of that, to always keep and help me to keep him at the center of our relationship and our marriage. As Gina said, I think doing that, no matter what gets thrown at us, we'll be able to overcome it and probably even come out stronger on the other side.
When we recorded this interview, Gina and Jeff had been married just a little over a month, and they both said it was the best month ever. It was so fun to see their joy and happiness. If you're like me and you love to see wedding photos, Gina and Jeff's are beautiful, and you can see them this week on the Unfolding Facebook and Instagram pages. And if you're waiting and hoping for someone to share your life with, I hope Gina and Jeff's story will encourage you. Never stop praying. And hey, ask your friends to pray too. I'm so grateful to Gina and Jeff for sharing their story. Thanks to all the folks that helped to make this episode of The Unfolding possible. Laura Pereno, Michael Shermack, our producer and network director, Jason Rackow, and a big thank you to Chris Love and the kind folks at Centricity Music in Franklin, Tennessee for allowing us to record there. We'll be back next week with another page of The Unfolding.